Serious?
Yeah. Exactly. Why? What's the point?
Okay,
Why
right.
so serious?
Okay. Let you,
So just if you just repeat back the piece to make it a complete sentence.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So thank you again for being in our video, and we're just going to ask some questions about the highlights, positive experiences of your life, and your thoughts on aging. So we're just going to start. Please tell me your name and a little bit about yourself.
well, my name is Fran Poole. 77 years young, and I was born and raised in Northfield, Vermont, at home. I was delivered at home by my grandmother, and after getting married when I was 20, I moved to Syracuse, New York, and I lived there until about 18 years ago. And I moved to Florida, and I've never regretted it. It's been wonderful. This is the most beautiful place in the world. And I call my relatives up in Vermont, and I'm going to tell you, they can't stand the winters, and they have to turn the heat on even now. And we're blessed down here. We're really blessed. Yeah, I love it here. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And will you tell us what a normal day is like for you now?
Now,
Yeah.
oh, well, I watched the Today Show. The first 2 hours, the third hour, and Hoda. And then I used to work up until last April. And I find that when you get at this stage in life, sometimes what are you going to do? And you just look around you, and I've been told I should get a dog. Then I could walk the dog every day like I see these people out here do. But I got enough people Lloyd to pick up afterwards. I don't need to pick up after a dog. I'm sorry. And other than that, I used to boat all the time, but I don't do that anymore. And I volunteer at Sarah's Kitchen Friday mornings, and I love it. I'm there for about 5 hours. We get ready for the people. We feed about 180 people on Friday night, which is a lot of homeless, displaced persons. And it's just fabulous because I've met a lot of other volunteers there. And the meals are fabulous because we even have kids that are going to college that can't really afford to eat, so they know that they get a free meal at the church. So, and I clean, and I do domestic engineering things. That's what I do. And that's it.
Great. Tell us, if you would, please, about your Sundays. What's your Sunday routine?
Oh, my Sundays? Nobody bothers me on a Sunday morning. They know I'm getting ready to go to the Bonefish. I am so anxious to go see my kids that everybody knows. And I never know who's going to show up at my table. I never. I mean, I've got a friend now, it's a doctor, and his girlfriend's a PA. It's Dr. Dan and Katrina, and they are such a nice couple. And so on my birthday, when I turned 77, he was on call at the hospital, and she also was working at the hospital. They came over to celebrate an hour that they had off to celebrate my birthday. And I was shocked. And so whenever they come in the restaurant now, they always make a point of coming to the table and saying hi. I have another couple that their names are Marvin and Gail. They're super. I remember their names because it reminds me of Marvin Gaye. So it's Marvin and Gail. And if I'm not there by 10 minutes to 11, they're turning around looking at the door, wondering where I am. And if I'm not there, they're going to call me. And I always go to the same table, and they treat me beautifully there. It's like the chef will come out and ask me what I think I'm going to eat. And he says, I'll make sure it's right. And I go, I know you always do. It's my retreat from the week. And I'm there quite a while. I'm there from 11 to 2. I shouldn't say that, but I am. And it's just fun. It's fun. And I've met some sweet kids. And I take them under my wing, kind of. And when I leave here to go there, Lloyd always tells me, say hi to your kids. And I go, I'm going to. And I just love it. And it's a way to get away from everything. And people say, you eat alone. I said, no, I don't eat alone. I've got all these kids that come and talk to me. But they're working. And no, they're working, but they always give me a couple minutes of their time throughout the morning. And it's wonderful. And there was one incident that was really funny. I needed car insurance, and my car insurance had gone up. So I told Marvin about it. I said, you know, my car insurance just went up another $50. He says, oh, I've got this card. You can get a better deal than that. Call this guy. He lives in Sebastian, and I know he can come up with a good deal. I said, okay. So I went 3 or 4 days, and finally I called Dale. And he says to me on the phone, he says, I didn't think you were going to call me. I said, well, how did you know I was even going to call you? He says, my dad told me. I said, your dad? He said, my dad's Marvin. I said, your father forgot to tell me about that. And he said, yeah, my dad called me and asked me if I called yet. And I said, well, I'm calling. And he did. He gave me a good deal. So I saved some money. It's influencing people. And if they ever gave my table away, I'd be like one of those, what? You gave my table away? No, they're sweet. They've reserved it till the end of the year, so I don't have to worry about it. So I'm all set.
Thank you. And what are you most proud of from your life, such as your greatest accomplishments or achievements?
Boy, when I was in Syracuse, I used to volunteer at the YMCA. I did that for 15 years. I used to give exercise classes for the older people like me now. And I used to give classes for lawyers, judges, nurses at lunchtime. And then my girlfriend and I would run up to Syracuse University 3 or 4 miles. And I would go home, and then I started, at 40, I started rowing at Syracuse University rowing team. And then I was a marathon runner, and I was a volunteer at Whiteface Mountain Ski Patrol for 15 years. And I happened to be on the 1980 Winter Olympics Ski Patrol. Met all the skiers. It was a tough 2 weeks, but it was worth it. It was a wonderful experience, and I met people from all over the world. I've gone to Switzerland and hiked in Switzerland. I was on a cross-country team. I'm proud of my 2 boys. I have a son that passed away 14 years ago of a brain tumor called astrocytoma, and he had 4 children. And I have another son. He's 23. He was 23 years in the Air Force, and he retired about 7 years ago. He's turned 54, and his daughter just got married. But I'm proud of him and his wife, who's a registered nurse. And I'm really proud of my granddaughter that just got married. Her and her husband just got out of the police academy, and they're both policemen for the Las Vegas Police Department. And they went to college to become, he was going to become a detective. He took, criminal justice. And my granddaughter went to college to become a fireman, and they end up both becoming policemen. So I told my son, you better watch out how you drive because your kids will pick you up. That's what I told him. So those are the proudest I've got. And I've got one of my sons that passed away, his older daughter. She was on her way to becoming a doctor, but she got burned out after 5 years of college. So now she's a research assistant in a pharmaceutical company, doing very, very well. Right now she's in Amsterdam. So she's done very well by herself. Yeah, I'm proud of her. She's a wonderful girl.
Great, thank you. How has your life changed since midlife, maybe around age 40?
Actually, it didn't. I think I got more involved in life. I was a smoker, and because I started running with all my girlfriends, and that's when I was so active. I was outside biking all the time, but I'm an anal when it comes to cleaning. I get out of control. I'm constantly doing something like that. It's terrible. It's terrible because my friends around here know me as sheet day on Saturday. That's when I change my sheets. And they call me up just to pick on me. Are you doing your sheets today? And I go, of course, Lloyd calls it shit day, but that's okay. But I just, the transition wasn't that hard. And I felt good because then I had stopped smoking. But then when my son died, or when he was diagnosed with this brain tumor, I started it all over again. And then afterwards, I quit 9 years ago. I said, why did I do that? But it was out of depression. So, but I've learned a lot as far as the younger generation. I think it's going to be difficult for the younger generation because there's too much telephones and computers, and they don't know how to socialize. I mean, when we go out to dinner sometimes, they'll be on their phone. They don't talk to each other. They don't communicate. And some of them don't even know how to spell because they get on there and they got spell check. I feel it's very hard for parents nowadays because it's too modern, very modern. And some of the parents have got to take control of their children. That's all there is to it.
Along those lines, what has changed the most in society since you were young?
Oh. Well, I didn't even have a TV until I was 16. And then we thought it was thrilling to look at the test pattern. I mean, we used to see Humpty Dumpty and whatever that. And I can remember when my dad, we didn't have color TV, and my dad bought one of those plastic sheets that had blue, orangey color, and green, so that it looked like you had color TV. It was stupid looking, but we thought it was great. This dates me back, but we used to have a ringer telephone. And you waited to, is anybody on this line? You know, and this is what I used to talk on. And then we graduated and it got more advanced. And I grew up with no dishwasher or a washing machine. I had a ringer down in the basement. I did about 10 loads of laundry every Saturday for my mom and dad because they both worked in a woolen mill. One worked in the morning and one worked at night. They never saw each other. They just worked. And I can remember going down in that cellar, getting my hands caught in that damn ringer, and then I'd have to go out, hang up the wash. Then when I got married, my ex-husband had gone to the military school, and he was stationed out in Illinois where Michael was born. And I got my first washing machine. I couldn't believe it. And then he had to go to Vietnam for 13 months. So I went back to live with my mom and dad. And we brought the washing machine and dryer. And my mother cried. She cried. She had never had a washing machine and dryer. And we put it in the basement. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And she just went down, and it was like I thought she was going to go to bed with it. She was so excited about it, and I was so happy for her. And my sister still lives in the house I was raised in, and they've got a washing machine and dryer, but no dishwasher. And everything's the same, except the floors have all been refinished. But I came from humble beginnings, and then I got married and moved again, and then I moved here. Yeah, it's been if I actually sat down and write every 5 years of what I did, it'd be quite an interesting story. It would be. Anyway.
What historical event in the world affected you the most?
Being involved with the 1980 Winter Olympics. That was big for me. And this is not something great, but my ex-husband had to be had a work thing out in the Midwest. And we had just gotten into this hotel. We were going to be there for 5 or 6 days. I went up to the workout room. In walks this guy with an entourage. And he sits on the bike next to me and he goes, "Are you going to the Michael Jackson concert?" And it was my birthday. And I said, "No, we just arrived." He said, "Well," and he orders his entourage over. He says, "Give me 2 tickets." So he says, "Here, 2 tickets." I'd never been to a concert in my life. And I went, "Oh my goodness." And it was a big time movie star's son who has since gone. And he was like a manager. And so my girlfriend, whose husband worked with my husband, they were in the other room. I said, "Karen, look what I got." She says, "Well, how did you get 2 tickets to Michael Jackson?" She said, "You know, you're so damn friendly that anybody will talk to you, and then they're just going to give you 2 tickets." So that night, her and I got ready. We got a cab. We get outside this great big auditorium, and the cab driver says, "I know just how to get there." So we went around the back. He said, "See that door?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "There's only one person there." He said, "You go to that door." We went to the door, and there was an usher there. Out front was lines of people. I said, "We're probably going to be in nosebleed heaven." We sat next to Michael Jackson's family and all of the members of the other people's family. We were opposite the stage, and it was another highlight of my life. That concert was the most wonderful concert I've ever seen in my life. So that 1980 Winter Olympics, and when the Twin Towers, that was sad for me because I was packing. I moved down here 3 days after, and my mother called me and said, "You can't go." I said, "Why, Mom?" She said, "Look what they did to those towers." I said, "What has that got to do with me?" "They might be after you." I said, "Mom, they're not after me. I'm going to Florida." And she hated the thought. And I think that bothered me a lot, to think that I was moving further away from my mother. So I didn't get a chance to see her too much. So that's about it.
What have you learned from aging?
It's not for the young. It really isn't. I mean, all of a sudden, what's up here is down here. And it seems like you can't walk like you used to. It seems all the things that you used to do, now the doctor says, "What did you used to do?" And I tell them, and they go, "Well, that's why you got to have this done. That's why you got to." It's tough. And then I was so used to doing stuff for people. And then when the lady told me this past year that I was old, that I should retire completely, I cried because I felt useless. And I think that hurts a lot of older people because then they go, what do you do now? And I can see where I know there's a lot of single older ladies here, and some of them look sad all the time. And it bothers me because you're not old in your brain. Your body might be getting older, but you still got your brain and you still can think, and you can listen to other people and learn from older people too. A lot. I talk to a lot of younger people, and you can give them knowledge just because of what you did.
How do you stay so energetic and have such a positive attitude? How do you do that?
It was from my son. When Stephen was dying, he always smiled. Always. They gave him 2 years to live. And he was on radiation and chemotherapy, and he said to me one day, we talked on the phone, and he says, I've quit taking chemotherapy and radiation because I don't want to be sick. I want to be able to enjoy what months I have left. And I said, that's fine. He said, I'll be more coherent. And I could see the strength in him because he knew he was dying. And he knew he was never going to see his children grow up. And I'm going, but he was so sweet. And he used to go to Duke University where they would do experiments on him because he said, I'm going to go. Once a month, he would go down there. And when he would go to the hospital in Syracuse, he always went to the cancer ward. He visited everybody at least twice a week. And the day of his funeral, I said to the funeral director, I said, what is going on? Where are all these people? There were 2,000 people outside my son's the funeral home. I didn't know half of these people, but a lot of them were cancer patients. And I went, look what he's done. He's given them hope. He's talked to these people. And then the place where he worked, he was a manager. And Scott was like a brother. He was the owner. And my daughter-in-law sent me pictures. Scott had made these big bulletin boards, one on one end of the Syracuse and one on the other end, coming and going with my son's picture up there saying, may he rest in peace, Stephen Poole. And then I got another inspiration because my sister's daughter is dying. She's 36 years old. She's in a wheelchair, and she's got what they call Friedreich's ataxia. It's worse than MS. They hope she makes it till she's 40. She had it while she was going to college to become a nurse. And then she was diagnosed, and she finally ended up going from a walker to a wheelchair. And she's married to a nurse who has to completely take care of her. She can't walk. She can't roll over. She's got 2 little boys. And they all come home from school and they'll get in her wheelchair. And they always tell people, pray for my mom that maybe someday she can walk again. And she smiles all the time. She's losing her voice, but we talk on the phone. She smiles all the time. And they send her to Philadelphia Children's Hospital free of charge. They fly her there, take care of the hotel, because they're doing experiments on her too, because she knows that she won't be living very long. She is an inspiration to everybody because she just smiles. Smiles and smiles. And I give her credit. She never gives up. And that young person is strong. You got to be strong to have a family that you know you can't. They made special wheels for her when her brother got married up in Maine. Big fat tires on her wheelchair. So, because he got married in the sand, and they rolled her out on the sand, and they sent pictures to me. And those are inspirations to me. Whew.
What advice would you give your younger self in your 20s or 30s?
Oh boy. One of them is use birth control. I'm serious. Because I think when you're young, especially in my day, they didn't talk about it. I wish I'd known. If you get my gist. My father used to say, the first one comes anytime, the next one takes 9 months. I said, you're right, Dad, it did. But don't rush. Talk to each other. Time goes by so fast because I feel young at heart. And I think about those days that, I had children by the time I was 23. And I wondered where it all went. Because I talk to 23-year-old now, and I didn't listen to music. I didn't go out. I didn't have the experience of having that to happen. Our only entertainment was getting a deck of cards on a Friday or Saturday night with a 6-pack of beer. And that was it, because we're still paying for the college education. That's the other thing. You got to pay for the college education, and it's expensive. And it's hard when you're bringing up a family, too. And listen to your parents. They're good for you. And a lot of us didn't do that. You know what I mean? Now, listen to your parents when you're younger. They've already had the experience. They know what you're going to go through. So, that would be my advice. Yeah.
And who has most positively influenced your life?
Well, like I said, my son, my niece, my mother and father, hands down. I can remember before my dad died. He died at 70. He worked so hard at this woolen mill. And I can remember when I used to go down at the mill. My father was a shearer. My mother was a spinner at this woolen mill. Together they made $150 take-home pay a week with 4 kids. And I remember going down after school and going in, because my dad and I would walk home because my mother had to go from 3 to 11 at night. So he'd leave the car for her so she didn't have to walk home in the dark. So I'd go get my dad, and he'd be in this big, big, bright room, and all this filaments was in the air. And he was breathing this in. Unbeknownst to him, it was killing him. And then I'd go see my mother. She had these big, long frames. She'd tell me what I was to cook for dinner. And when I get home, I used to have to help the kids with their homework. I was in high school and I had to be in bed by 9 o'clock. What kid in high school goes to bed at 9 o'clock? And my dad and mom, I never heard them fight. Never, ever, harsh words. And before my dad died, I said to him, I said, did you and mom ever fight? And he goes, no. I said, I didn't think so. I said, I'm surprised. He said, we didn't have to. Your mother was I loved her so much, respected her so much, and there was no reason. There was no reason. So we grew up in a household where you never heard anybody fighting, except for us kids, but we never heard mom and dad fight. And that was I've had people say, well, they must be lying to each other. I said, no, they just didn't fight. You don't find too many people that go in their life. My father adored my mother. He did. He was brought up in an atheist family, and she was brought up with 16 brothers and sisters, and she was a Catholic. He was an atheist. And my grandmother and grandfather were really mad when my father was baptized Catholic at 26. He was 26, she was 18. And they were devoted to each other. Oh, it was a wonderful marriage. Let's put it that way. And I admire that. I do.
Okay, our last question. What is something you can do today that you couldn't do when you were younger?
Oh, I can use my washing machine and dryer, and I can sleep because I don't have to be anywhere unless it's to the doctors. I can go out in the fresh sunlight whenever I want to. I can enjoy just looking out my window. I've got the most beautiful view. I can go across the street to the ocean. And living in the city, Syracuse, was okay. But I like where I live now. And I love living on the island because it's peaceful. And I love everything around me. I do. My brother came out here. That was another thing I admire about my mother. Our neighbor who never even had electricity or running water. He had a pump. And he lived across the street from my father and mother. And his wife had had a baby in midlife. And they couldn't find her one day. In the middle of winter, she was found she was 9 miles away from home, right outside of the capital of Vermont, with a brand new baby in a stroller. And it was 30 below zero. Now, policemen found her, and Charlie was crippled. And he came to my mom and dad and said, I don't want Bobby to be in an orphanage. Could you take care of him? They took care of him until he went into the Army. And he was like a brother to me. That took a lot from my mom and dad to do that. And all these things that I grew up with, I just amazed that I'm fortunate enough to have what I have right now. Because I have 2 sisters that are just barely making it by. So I feel very fortunate. So when I can, I try to help them out. I'm always trying to help somebody. And everybody at the Bonefish knows I overtip. And it's so funny because if I see somebody that needs something, I'll give it to them. I have a friend that's going to have a birthday, and she's 2 years older than me. She has no money. And each year I send her money. And one year I sent her money, she didn't call me. And I said, Judith, did you go to your mailbox today? And she said, no, I don't get mail, Franny. I said, I want you to walk to the mailbox right now. She goes to the mailbox and she's crying. She said, I can't believe it. You're like an angel. I said, what's the matter? She said, my car is in the shop and I can't get the car out. I have no money. And you made it possible. I can get my car. And I went, see, there you go. Go to the mailbox more often, I said to her. So I try to help out as much as I can. I really do. I'll give as much as I can give. Yeah. Because that's what I was taught when I was younger. My dad always used to tell me, no matter what you do in life, be proud. That's all you have to do, is be proud of what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. So that's what I try to live by. Yep. And those are my words and I'm sticking to them. That's it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else you
Yeah, you know, a lot of the purpose of this is basically to tell these kids that you don't have to be afraid of aging. It's not the
No.
worst thing in the world. So maybe if you could just ask her, is it, what should they be afraid of aging? Is it the worst thing in the world? And see.
Oh,
And just talk to her.
Okay. You ready?
Go ahead and ask her. Yep.
Okay. All right. So part of this is to try to help younger generations not be so ageist or fearful of aging. So what are your thoughts on that?
growing every year, you should be proud of what you're doing because you've just had a year. It's like history. You've learned something this past year. So add it to your thinking and thought process for the following year. Well, if you didn't do something right, maybe you've just got to correct it, make it better. Do it a little bit better next year. Don't get down on yourself because nobody should ever give up. Just keep trying to just do better in your life, really, because I got better. I knew what happened to me. I was working as an assistant to the CEO of a computer company up in Syracuse. And when I moved down here, I didn't have a job or anything. And I moved and I ended up, I lived over at the marina and I ended up being a weed whacker and a lawnmower. And I made money that way. Then somebody says, what else do you like to do? I said, I love cleaning. I ended up with 41 clients cleaning. And then this other girl came up to me and I was working for her. And she said, what did you do before this? And I told her. And she said, I knew something. She said, I want you to work for me full time and you're not going to just clean. I need an assistant. And we were at lunch while she was at, I thought she was going to fire me. And so she said, I want you full time, 5 days a week. I said, you can't afford me. And so I told her what I wanted. She said, you need a raise. And I said, okay. So I worked for her. Unbeknownst to me, she was a multi-millionaire. And she was the sweetest. I learned so much because I took care of everything for her, everything. And I even went to Quito, Ecuador with her because she had cancer. And so when I tell people what I've done, I said, so I cleaned houses. I used to be a secretary. I cleaned houses, I mowed lawns, but I was proud of what I did. You just keep moving on and never get down on yourself. I see some people get so upset with themselves because they think they should do it. Should get it right now. Well, you learn that. As you age, you get better at everything you do. So you can't just say, oh, I want it now. It's not going to happen. You're going to learn that as you get older. You're going to learn, oh, I can do it better this way. Oh, I can do it better that way. And you just keep going and progressing. And you learn. But don't give up and never say you can't. Don't ever say you can't, because you always can. You can always do something. So yeah, I would tell the kids of today, look what you got to look forward to. Everybody gets old, but you don't have to be old. You can be still young at heart. Yeah, you're walking around in a different body, but you're still thinking okay. I get along with older people, younger kids, and they see how I'm progressing. And I think it gives them, because I've talked to some young kids and they'll say, you don't act like some of the older people. I said, because I appreciate every day that I get. And that's the way you should. And every day is like a gift. I mean, you just keep going on and on and on. And you just enjoy every moment because you never know what the next moment's going to be. So just relax a little, because it's not going to come at you right now. You got to work for it, but don't give up. Just as you get older, you learn. You really do. It's all up here. And some things you do want to forget. Some of these things you really want to forget. You go, why did I do that? You know, but that's all in this aging process. Yeah, it's. I'm glad I'm still here. You know, there was people that used to say if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Well, I took as much care, although you don't have to go running up a mountain to take care of yourself. You can walk up that mountain if you have to. So, and like my doctor said, walking is just as good as running. So I learned that the hard way. So yeah, just take your time. You can do it. Older people get older. That's the whole process. That's just what it is. Okay?